Welcome back to Steel City Sports. So today is part 2 of our series where we rank all starting quarterbacks in the NFL. So if you didn't see part 1, there will be a link in the description to that video. I recommend you check that out just to see who's already been listed. In that video, we did 32 through 17. Today we'll be doing 16 through 1. And as I said in part 1, this isn't necessarily based on their stats from the past year. I think that's a boring way to rank the quarterbacks. The criteria I used for doing this list was I just simply thought, if I'm going into next year and my goal is to win the Super Bowl, who do I want as my quarterback? Obviously, whoever's at number 1 would be at the top of that list, and then so forth all the way down the list. So that's kind of the criteria I used for making this list, so keep that in mind. If you want to look at the stats, you can go do that on your own, but let's talk about these quarterbacks. Coming in at number 16, we have Mr. Regular Season, Dak Prescott. He's really good if your goal is to beat up on the New York Jets, the New York Giants, the Washington Commanders. If your goal is to beat those teams, Dak Prescott would be top 5 in the NFL. However, like I said, my goal is to win the Super Bowl. I don't trust Dak Prescott in big moments at all. I think he's the most overrated player in the NFL, especially this year, whenever you had legit people in the media calling for him to be in the MVP conversation. I think is a complete disgrace. If Dak Prescott would have won the MVP this year, it would have completely just destroyed the credibility of the MVP award. I'm glad Lamar got it because Dak winning an MVP would have probably given me a brain aneurysm because I just don't see it with Dak. If you take the star off his helmet, you put Dak Prescott on a random team, like say Dak Prescott was the Jaguars quarterback, or if he was the Seahawks quarterback, do you think Dak Prescott would anyone talk about Dak? I think he really is very low ceiling. He can put up stats against bad teams, but anytime the team needs to lean on Dak Prescott, anytime the team needs Dak to be the reason they won the game, that's when Dak always falls short. So yeah, I get it. His stats look good. He's been on a lot of stacked rosters throughout his time in Dallas and has very little to show for it in the the postseason. So Dak, I think he's the most overrated player in the NFL, and I would put him as 16th on this list. Coming in at 15, we have Brock Purdy. I think he's one of the more difficult players on the list to rank because his sample size is kind of small, and obviously being Mr. Irrelevant, it's kind of hard to really decide where he lands, especially playing on the 49ers, where he basically has the Avengers on his offense, with Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Trent Williams. When you're the 6th best player on your offense, that's a little alarming, but he's good. He does his job perfectly. And that's ultimately all Kyle Shanahan wants, is a guy to go in there and run his system. And Brock Purdy is very good at doing that. And you got to also give him credit for the fact that he came into the team, obviously, as the last pick in the draft, but he was also the 4th string quarterback on the team. And it's very hard to work your way up from 4th string to starter. And he's been really good in big moments. This is just the guy Kyle wants, is to get the ball to the playmakers. And game manager, the narrative around the term game manager kind of pisses me off because people act like it's a diss or a knock on someone to call them a game manager. No, it's a style of play. And, it's not the most exciting style of play like a Lamar who can just go crazy in any which way. It's a very methodical, at times one-dimensional type of play, but it wins a lot of football games. Tom Brady was a game manager. So I don't think that's a knock on him to call him that. He just does his job at the perfect level for Shanahan. I think he does have clear limitations. I don't think he should have won MVP. I was kind of, along with Dak, I thought that was kind of silly when people were talking about him as an MVP. But I haven't seen him crumble in big games like Dak, so I will take him over Dak. And at number 14, we have Jordan Love. If you would have told me before the year that Jordan Love would have been 14th on my list, I probably would have told you, well, I was probably drunk when I made that list. But wow, we just knew so little about him. I was he'll probably be a low ceiling, okay player. He'll get the ball to the playmakers, but he's not really going to wow you. I was wrong about that because the guy's a fantastic athlete. He has a goddamn cannon of an arm. And he really flexed that throughout the stretch of the year. And you talk about a season of 2 halves because the first half of the year, Jordan Love looked bad. And you even had the GM, you had the head coach publicly saying that Jordan Love is the reason why we're losing games. They were saying stuff like that at the time. And I don't know what turned around coming off that bye. I think it's the greatest turnaround of a season ever. Post-bye, for what Jordan Love did, was statistically one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And you can say all you want that this might be like recency bias putting him this high, but keep in mind, he had more touchdowns this year than the MVP, Lamar Jackson. So, like, the production's there, the eye test is there, and he was really good in the playoffs. I think he definitely outplayed Brock Purdy in that game. Obviously, he did throw the game-losing interception, but I think that just comes down to a lack of experience. And, of course, he walloped, just completely exposed Dan Quinn's world-class defense in the wild card round. So I think there's a lot of special with this guy. The Packers have done it again. They've got another franchise quarterback. There's a lot to like with him. He's young. He's on a really nice contract. He comes in here at 14. Coming in at 13, we have Kirk Cousins. One of the biggest tragedies of this season was losing Kirk Cousins midway through the year, because he was by far and away having the best season of his career from a production standpoint, from just stylistically, the confidence he played with, especially in the big games. It's been a narrative throughout Kirk's entire career that he just shrinks in the primetime games. That was the opposite. He was undefeated in his primetime games this year. And even after Justin Jefferson got hurt, which is the best receiver in the NFL going into the year, was basically unanimous. Justin Jefferson's the best wide receiver in the NFL. He lost that guy and did not miss a step in his production, then obviously got hurt. I think had he not gotten hurt, Kirk probably would have ended up in the top 10. It's just been a little while since I've seen him play, but that first half of the year run he had was awesome, and he was probably one of the guys we talked about the most on this channel because he was having a phenomenal year. I am kind of weary going forward with him, at his age with that injury. I just don't know. He'll probably end up back with the Vikings, but it is a shame. I think Kirk, he was having an awesome year. I think he deserves to be here at 13. And at 12, we have Baker Mayfield. Baker has always had the talent to be a good quarterback in the NFL. There's a reason why he went number 1 overall in the draft and was a Heisman. He looked incredible at Oklahoma. But let's be honest, it looked like his career was heading down the path of bust, generational bust, being a number 1 overall pick and then bouncing around from team to team. He was on 4 different teams within not even a 2-year stretch of time. It looked bad for Baker, but I felt like this was the year he just grew up. He grew up. He stopped with all the immature stuff like beefing with reporters and trying to fight players on other teams. He stopped all that, and he just focused on football. And you got to keep in mind, the Buccaneers didn't reach out to Baker. He reached out to them and got there. He had to battle out for the starting job. I think the past year or so has kind of humbled Baker, and it's let him play a very more loose, free style of football, and he had by far and away the best year of his career this year. Baker Mayfield was awesome. And a big thing about Baker is his toughness. I think he is one of the toughest. He's more cut from that old school cloth. He's one of the more tough guys. Just you can beat him up, you can break his ribs. He's going to tape it up and stay in the game. We saw that the last week of the regular season. And then the playoff game against the Eagles, he was incredible. Probably the best game of his career was that playoff game, wild card round against Philadelphia. And he was really good against Detroit as well, similar to Jordan Love, kind of threw a game-losing interception. But you got to give it to Baker. Had an incredible year this year. At number 11, we have Kyler Murray, and I will admit I'm probably more biased towards him than others. He's my favorite non-Steeler in the NFL. I've always been a massive fan of him, but not long ago, Kyler Murray was regarded as easily a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. And I feel like the discourse about him dropping in the rankings around the league has kind of just been more for the off-the-field stuff, his negotiations kind of got ugly. He was injured last year, injured for a good bit of this year. So it just felt like people weren't really focusing on the film, because the film doesn't lie. When you give the little guy some players, he'll win you some damn games. Arizona has legitimately been one of the worst run franchises over the past 5 years now. He got that team to a playoff. To the playoffs back in 2021. They won 11 games. When you put an actual team around the guy, he can win games. He's just a legit playmaker in every sense of the word. I think he's one of the most difficult players in the league to game plan for, just because of his elusiveness, how goddamn fast he is at the quarterback position, and he's a very high IQ player as well. So the Cardinals, they got one thing set in stone next year, and that is Kyler Murray will be our quarterback. That's something you didn't know going into this year, going forward. Is Kyler still our guy? I remember the discourse around the Cardinals entering the season was, are they going to just tank and get Caleb number 1 overall and trade Kyler? That was kind of the conventional wisdom at the time, is yeah, they're going to land Caleb. Kyler will be on the new team next year. Now you know for sure Kyler's your guy going forward, because he proved coming back, even though the team sucked around him, he proved he could win games, and he proved that he's still a high-end player. So I don't know what the team overall is going to do success-wise, but individually, I think he's one of the most gifted and unique players at the position in the entire league. Kicking off the top 10, we have Jared Goff. So that's now 3 first overall picks we've talked about in a row. Jared Goff, I think, is a really unique player in that he's really good off script and on script. Like, on script, he's incredible. Obviously, you can do that when you have the best offensive coordinator in football and Ben Johnson. Running that guy's system is incredible, of course. Getting the ball to the playmakers, especially. They remind me like of a young 49ers team. With the collection of talent they have with Laporta, Gibbs, St. Brown, even like Jameson Williams, I think is going to be really good going forward as well. Also, David Montgomery, like having that collection of talent, having a top 5 O-line, staying on script, Jared Goff looks amazing. But he proved this year that he can also go off script and look really good as well. Like, he throws one of the best deep balls in the league. I think he gets kind of underrated when we talk about him as like just a pure arm talent, because there's a reason why he went number 1 overall, and that's because his arm. The guy has a bazooka of an arm, and he just doesn't really get talked about in that conversation because the Lions don't really run plays like that a lot. But whenever occasionally that's required of him, he can do that with ease. And also, he's just a production machine and is really efficient, makes very little mistakes, and was actually pretty good in the playoffs this year. Like, outside of a couple big games in the regular season that kind of worried me a little, like the Dallas game. That was kind of my biggest criticism of Jared Goff was, well, in the big games, I just don't really trust him. Well, he was really good in both the playoff games. In all 3 of the playoff games, against the Rams, his former team, against who they played, Tampa. And then even though they lost against the Niners, it wasn't because Goff, it was because Dan Campbell and his moronic going for it on 4th instead of taking the points. That's a video for another day. But Jared Goff, yeah, awesome year. At number 9, we have Trevor Lawrence, who, from a talent perspective, I still view Trevor Lawrence as elite. But what the hell was this season, honestly? Like, what the hell happened with the Jaguars? There was a point in the time where the Jags were 8-3 this year. They were the 1 seed in the AFC, and they just fell off a goddamn cliff. I don't know what happened. I didn't watch every Jaguars game, obviously, so I can't break it down for you guys what happened. But it feels like Trevor Lawrence's stock is, like, at an all-time low right now. Like, I know guys in mainstream media that are just full-blown done with Trevor and, like, writing him off, especially with the contract. Like, I don't know. Definitely a weird year. Probably one of my most, if not my most disappointing player, because he was my MVP pick this year. Coming off that year they had in 2022 where they won a playoff game. They gave the Chiefs a good fight in the divisional round. Coming off that year, I was like, I'm buying all the Jag stock. I'm buying all the Trevor Lawrence stock that I can afford. Just give me all of it. And I loaded up on them. I thought they would be the 1 seed. I thought he'd be the MVP. Turns out they just didn't take that next step. They weren't ready. To be at a point where you were 8-3 and then finish the year 9-8, miss the playoffs, lose that final game. The Titans were basically playing for nothing. All the Titans were playing for was to stick it to their in-division rival Jacksonville. The Jags, like, you have to beat. That was a 4-win team in the Titans. Like, you have to win that game. Trevor just wasn't good in that game. Like I said, weird year. I think he's going to be one of the most, like, pressured players going into next season just because this year was such a shit show. But like I said when I first started with him, I just think from a talent perspective, I've seen moments where it makes sense why he's been regarded as the prodigy. So I will leave him in the top 10 for now. Coming in at number 8, we have Justin Herbert. I feel like the discourse around Justin Herbert is genuinely frightening. How some people can think that Justin Herbert's not good or overrated. Like, the guy is just a legit production machine. And it doesn't matter who's on the field. I don't think there's been a more injured duo in the NFL at the receivers position than Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Go over, like, the past 3 seasons. Look at any team's top 2 duos at the receiver position. Has any team dealt with more injuries to their top 2 guys than the Chargers? Feels like at least one of them misses the whole year. The other one's going to be banged up. And it doesn't matter. Like, he can produce no matter who's on the field. And, he hasn't won a playoff game, but look at who his head coach was, Brandon Staley. I won't get into Brandon Staley now, but if you've listened to me at all during the regular season, Brandon Staley was public enemy number 1 on this channel. And I'm a Steelers fan. I dealt with a guy named Matt Canada. I got a lot of issues with that. But Brandon Staley was even a bigger clown than even Matt Canada was. Like, that's saying something as a Steelers fan for me to admit that there was a bigger idiot out there than Matt Canada. But there was, and that was Justin Herbert's head coach. So I give him credit for the fact that he even made a playoff berth with that incompetent idiot as his head coach. Now he has a legit head coach in Jim Harbaugh. Now there's no excuses. Now that you have Jim Harbaugh, who has a proven track record of winning everywhere he goes, I don't think Jim Harbaugh has ever quite had this level of talent at the quarterback position, no matter where he's been. So it's a big year for the Chargers next year. I get it, they're in the Chiefs division, but you got to at least make the playoffs next year. So if they miss playoffs next year, then I will give you validity to that argument that he might be overrated. But as for right now, I still think he's one of the just best quarterbacks in the league from a pure talent standpoint. At number 7, ironically enough, a guy who wears number 7, C.J. Stroud, had the greatest rookie season in the history of the sport of football. Going to an organization that was literally just a shit show, dumpster fire, disaster in Houston. Like, legitimately one of the worst run franchises in American sports over the past 5 years. The Deshaun mess. The incompetent people that they had running the organization, from Lovie Smith to David Culley. To go to that team that has been such a just laughingstock of the league for so long. A team that placed, what did they win last year? 3 games? They won 3 games last year and picked second overall. To go to that team and transform them to the best team in their division, winning 10 games and winning a playoff game, and not just any ordinary playoff game. We're talking about they beat the Browns. And you know what's significant about the Browns? They had the number 1 pass defense in the NFL. C.J. Stroud looked like a 10-year veteran as a rookie. Came in there, completely changed the culture of the team. I think they're now like the favorite in the AFC South going forward for years now. It looked like Jacksonville, this was going to be their division. Nope, I think the Texans, that this is going to be their division because they got this guy. This guy is awesome. Just a great leader. Makes very little mistakes. I think he had, 5 picks this year? As a rookie, that's like unheard of. And like I said, winning a playoff game, going to that team, yeah, he's awesome. He's sensational. I think he's already a superstar. At number 6, we have Matthew Stafford, one of the best raw athletes at the quarterback position, and arguably like the best arm talent at the quarterback position. I think he's at least top 3 in just terms of arm strength. Like, you'd probably put Mahomes before him. You'd probably put Allen before him. But after that, I think Matthew Stafford has the best arm, just pure arm talent in the entire NFL. And, going into the year, stock was pretty low for Matthew Stafford. Like, coming off that disaster that the Rams had in 2022, I think they won, 5 games. He missed a lot of time that year. It was very low. Like, I didn't have really any expectations for him or the team, but he was sensational this year. I mean, anytime he's healthy and has just a competent team around him, he looks really good and is one of the most capable quarterbacks in the league. And that's why, keep it in mind, like we said at the beginning of this video, this is about who I want to win the Super Bowl. And Matthew Stafford has proven that he can win a Super Bowl. And it feels like he plays at his best when the spotlights shine the brightest. Kicking off the top 5, we have Jaylen Herz. I feel like this is one I'm going to get a lot of crap about because it feels like the opinion of Hertz around the league is at an all-time low. I just don't get it. I still think he's one of the best, most versatile players at the position. Does he have the arm talent of Josh Allen? No. Does he have the elusiveness of Lamar Jackson? No. But he does so many things at a high-end level that, for me, I still think he's top 5 talent at the quarterback position. And I just think the Eagles, them having their struggles, I feel like Jaylen was one of the things keeping them afloat this year, especially in the clutch. He was awesome. I think his connection with A.J. Brown is sensational. Jaylen Herz was the reason why the Eagles won games earlier on in the year. And that's why, I dinged on Dak a lot, is because he doesn't make winning plays when it matters most. Well, Jaylen Herz is the exact opposite of that. And when people talk about how he had a disappointing year this year, well, yeah, no shit. Look at what he did in 2022. He was runner-up for league MVP and got his team to a Super Bowl and outplayed Patrick Mahomes in that Super Bowl. So anything short of winning league MVP, winning the Super Bowl, and outplaying Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl would have been a disappointing year for him. At number 4, we have Lamar Jackson, the reigning MVP. I think he's just, everything I said about Jaylen basically applies to Lamar in terms of the fact that he does so much at a high level that he's just legitimately one of the most gifted talents at the quarterback position ever. He's one of the few quarterbacks to ever win multiple MVPs, and just his ability to like manipulate the pocket. I'm not talking about just getting out of the pocket and running for a first down. Like, obviously that's incredible on its own, but his ability to just move around in the pocket and dodge defenders and use his tackles to block for him, like the way he does it is just so elusive and insane. Like, he had a couple plays in that Chiefs game, in the AFC title game, where it was like, how do you stop this guy? Like, he is unstoppable. And I feel like it's always going to follow Lamar no matter what happens. The discourse around him, it's always going to come up to, well, what did he do in the playoffs? This year, I don't think that's quite a fair argument, because ultimately, who did they lose to? It's the Chiefs. They're in the midst of a dynasty. It's like, yeah, like, it sucks they lost, but ultimately, who did they lose to? Patrick effing Mahomes. Like, it's like those great teams in the 90s. Like, the Jazz had 2 Hall of Famers on that team. Who did they run into? Well, Michael Jordan in the midst of his prime. So it's like, yeah, it sucks, but at the same time, they lost to the dynasty. What do you want them to do? And I think the game plan, this is another thing, we're getting kind of off topic, but the game plan for the Ravens in that game was just god-awful. The fact that, I won't get into it now, but Lamar, I still think he's really gifted. He's still young. He has a lot of time still. At number 3, we have Superman, Josh Allen. I think he's the most physically gifted quarterback in the NFL right now. Just his frame, his ability to bulldoze people, and having arguably the best pure arm talent in the NFL. Just one of the most gifted players to ever play the position ever. He's a monster. And you look at how much of a disaster they were midway through the year. They were 6-6. Kind of looked like they weren't even going to make playoffs. And then they went on to go, 5-1. They looked awesome. I think he had a legit argument as MVP this year. And again, like we just talked about Lamar, anytime you bring up Josh Allen and his lack of playoff success, who's he running into? Who's he losing to? Patrick Mahomes. Like, at the end of the day, what do you want him to do? And I felt like this was going to be the year the Bills finally got it done. I think they need to retune their team. I definitely think Sean McDermott, it's time for him to be shown the exit. But it's undeniable. Josh Allen, his talent is just unprecedented. To basically be like the frame and athleticism of Cam Newton while also having Dan Marino's arm. The second best quarterback in the NFL is Joe Burrow, the forgotten guy. It feels like he's not really put in these top conversations anymore because he missed a lot of this year. But I still think he is the second best to Mahomes in the league right now. He's done something that Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen have not done, and that's beat Patrick Mahomes in a playoff game in Arrowhead and gone to a Super Bowl. I don't know how people forget that, but he's done that. He also beat Josh Allen in the playoffs in Buffalo. I mean, for me, the thing that separates Joe Burrow, it's not that he's the best athlete out there, but when it comes down to just IQ, mentality, that's where he really thrives. He does kind of remind me of Tom Brady in that way. When the lights shine the brightest, it feels like he is a lot he gets 10 notches better than everyone else on the field and just responds to the big moments. He's not intimidated. He's just a big-time playmaker. At number 1, of course, is Patrick Mahomes, the reigning back-to-back Super Bowl MVP. What do you guys want me to say about Mahomes that hasn't already been said? I mean, I think the gap between him and Burrow is very noticeable. Even though Burrow beat him once, the fact that he's been a starter in the NFL for 6 years and has gotten his team to at least the AFC Championship 6 times. 6 out of 6 to go to at least the third round. Think of how many players have never even been to the third round in their career. And this guy has done that every year he's been a starter in the NFL. And he's been to, 4 Super Bowls, won 3 of them. I don't know. I mean, I think he legit, the only person you can mention in the same breath of Patrick Mahomes, I think in the history of the league, is Tom Brady. I think it's Brady and Mahomes. They're on their own separate category right now. And like I said, like I've alluded to throughout this video, we're witnessing Michael Jordan in his prime where he beat everybody in the 90s. That's what Patrick Mahomes is right now. So that has been my ranking of all the quarterbacks. If you made it this far, you listened to it, I really appreciate it. Definitely let me know your list in the comments. I definitely look forward to seeing those. Please like and subscribe. Thanks.